my friends been asking where Amanda's been. They said she seemed like such a perfect 10. Asked me when I was gonna take her home to Cleveland. She was just your type, dark hair and with the green-brown eyes. Real smart and she cleaned up nice. They asked me why, said if you really need a reason, well, I'm looking for a girl that's fine. If I drive a Civic and she does not mind, riding in it with the windows down, cranking Steve, Winwood loud next to me. I'm looking for a girl who's seen house-blown speakers and a broke AC in a two-seater with a 250,000 miles on the motor, and she was looking for that Range Rover. When she was searching for designer homes, the custom kitchen with the Viking stove, the saving pictures on that big iPhone, you know the one. And she hated beer, she didn't catch a college game all year. She was way too into my curry. She tried to pick the single and it all came clear that I was looking for a girl that's fine. If I drive a Civic and she does not mind, riding in it with the windows down, cranking Steve, Winwood loud next to me. I'm looking for a girl who's seen house-blown speakers and a broke AC and a two-seater with a 250,000 miles on the motor, and she was looking for that Range Rover. She just wants that, she wants that Range Rover. Just wants that Range Rover. Well, she was looking for that Range Rover. I was in a Civic. I tried to take a road trip and she just wasn't with it. If this music wasn't paying, she'd have left me in a minute. Left me in a minute. Oh, I'm looking for a girl that's fine. If I drive a Civic and she does not mind, riding in it with the windows down, cranking Steve, Winwood loud next to me. I'm looking for a girl who's seen house-blown speakers and a broke AC in a two-seater with a 250,000 miles on the motor, and she was looking for that Range Rover. She just wants that, she wants that Range Rover. Just wants that Range Rover.
Oh man, de la A
Hoy
a la
la
Z.
cosa se puso
Wow,
buena.
wow, 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 yippee-yo, yippee-yay.
El gozo corre por mi vena.
You xylophone?
Vamos a olvidarnos de la pena.
Pero ya.
Que esta fiesta nadie la frena. Sin
Súbalo,
parar. Porque traímos bombas para fincar y esto nadie nos lo puede quitar. No importa lo que pase, vamos a gozar. Traemos el sazón y somos la sal. Porque traímos bombas para fincar y esto nadie nos lo puede quitar. No importa lo que pase, vamos a gozar. Traemos el sazón y somos la sal.
Yo, Redimido tiene bomba que retumba. Ponme la DJ que esto es pa' bendecir la rumba. Ando con el Rey León como Timón y Pumba. Sí, pero el que se escapó de la tumba. ¿Cómo te explico? Aquí andamos coronado y pico. ¿Dónde grito de Dios? ¿A quien glorifico? USA, Dominicana y Puerto Rico. Bomba para fincar, díselo Vico. No se me desesperen, ya sé que tienen hambre pero no se alteren. Aquí llegó el maestro con pan para que cenen. Y hay suficiente para comer aquí para que lleven. Let's go. Dímelo compa, dímelo parce, dímelo manín. Te traje la música urbana pero con letra clean. Para entrar al reino no hace falta un pin, solo sigue los pasos del king.
Porque traímos bombas para fincar y esto nadie nos lo puede quitar. No importa lo que pase, vamos a gozar. Traemos el sazón y somos la sal. Porque traímos bombas para fincar y esto nadie nos lo puede quitar. No importa lo que pase, vamos a gozar. Traemos el sazón y somos la sal.
Que te la echo mi español muy malo. I speak English till I get up tu condado. Hit the beach escuchan 40 deep with mis hermanos. Ya don't understand my lingo, too pesado. Wepa, dale. Si lo tengo power of the Lord, I keep it on me. Every day is like a party, tell the drama go away. I don't do it for approval, I just do what God say. Car that cook me up a beat, I ate it in the driveway. Dale, live my life inside the valley. No, he walking with me, get my enemies on Cali. Yeah, boy, they are down in Paraguay. Me and Funky got together, that's a crazy pair, boy.
Se puso buena, y mira la escena. Estamos cerrando la novena. Va a ser llena y te soy sincero. Nos tocó batear y Jesús tiene el madero. So ay, canta y no llores, more. Que vendrán tiempos mejores. Con tristeza tu rostro no devore. Que la paz es el gas que prende tus motores. Tu esperanza está en los días 15, espero. Debería estar en el día tercero. Y no me llaman los bomberos, más prende el noticiero porque la cosa se puso buena. El gozo corre por mi vena. Vamos a olvidarnos de la pena. Esta fiesta nadie la frena. Sin parar.
Esto es para el rico, esto es para el pobre, para el que le falta, para el que le sobre, para el que lo quiera y no lo tenga, para el que lo tenga y no lo quiera, para la iglesia, para el caserío, para los que son y los que no son de los míos, y para los tigres que andan en jipeta y hasta los que andan en bicicleta.
Porque traímos bombas para fincar y esto nadie nos lo puede quitar. No importa lo que pase, vamos a gozar. Traemos el sazón y somos la sal. Porque traímos bombas para fincar y esto nadie nos lo puede quitar. No importa lo que pase, vamos a gozar. Traemos el sazón y somos la sal.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Ridge Community Church Online. If we haven't met yet, my name is Allison and I'm excited to be your host for today. So I don't know if you've seen this trend going around, but apparently some people have been making creepy versions of the Easter Bunny. I would argue that any life-size bunny is a little bit creepy, but I can see where they're going with this. Naturally, we thought we would make a little game out of it, and we call it Easter Bunny, cute or creepy. So everyone loves a good picture of the Easter Bunny, but not all bunnies are created equal. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put on the screen a picture of a bunny and its face will be covered up. And your job is to guess based on what you can see if it's cute or creepy bunny. Got it? Okay, let's get started. So first of all, here we go. That's pretty creepy, yep. And how about the next one? Okay, so they're gonna call this one cute, going against what I said earlier, but that is not a super scary bunny, I guess. All right, next. And that one, yeah, creepy. And how about our last one? Yep, creepy. No debate about that one. Wow, that was interesting. Let's see if I can redeem this with a little takeaway. Sometimes you have to move past your initial impression of something to see what it's really like. And Easter is no different. Maybe you see Easter as this little gimmicky holiday with the Easter bunny and the Easter egg hunts. Or maybe you see Easter as this religious obligation where you have to go to church. Either way, we think that misses the real picture of Easter. It's a day of celebration, not obligation. And our entire faith relies upon what happened on Easter Sunday and what Jesus did to prove he is worth following. So to get us ready for that, over the last few weeks, we've been in a series called Canceling Jesus. And we're leaning into some of the hardest stuff Jesus taught. It's stuff we sometimes like to skim over because it can make us uncomfortable, but we don't want to miss out on the full life that Jesus offers. And today is arguably the hardest thing Jesus calls us to do. It might seem far-fetched at first, but I want to invite you to go on this journey. No matter your current thoughts on faith or whatever your gut reaction is to today, try to be open to what God might be trying to tell you. And before our teaching pastor shares today, our band is going to play a song with some lyrics about being open to God. And if those lyrics are true for you, I'd encourage you to use it as a prayer to God. And if you're not sure about Jesus, that's okay. I'd encourage you to use this song to think about how it describes a connection with Jesus and how that might be different from your current understanding of faith. So let me send it over to the band.
Take it all, my life want to welcome everyone who's joining us online and in Oak Creek, Franklin, and to everyone in Greenfield. It's so great to be with you today. If we haven't yet met, my name is Tyler, and I serve as one of our teaching pastors here. And to start our time off together today, I just have this question for you. Who in your life is the hardest to say no to? If you're joining us online, you can actually answer that question right now in the chat, or maybe leave a comment if you're joining us later. But just think, who is that person that just has your heart? You just can't say no to them. Maybe it's your kid. You know, they're young and you're in the store and they want that toy and they just kind of bat their eyes at you and you're like, all right, go ahead and throw it in the cart. Or maybe it's not your kid. Maybe it's your kids' kids, you know, and the grandkids. You know, I watch my parents with my kids today, and I see all those extra trips to McDonald's, all those extra gifts just because, and I see them like do all these special treats, and I'm like, where was that 30 years ago? I don't know, you know, and so I see them do that so they can't say no to my kids. Maybe it's not your kids, maybe it's your significant other, maybe your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your spouse, but who is that person that is just hard for you to say no to? My bet is if you got real honest with yourself, what is true of me is true of you. And the answer to that question is actually yourself. For example, every night I go through the same routine. I have a late night snack, and I always tell myself, hey, I'm going to have a healthy snack. You know, I'm going to get that protein filled, you know. And then I see the Reese's peanut butter cups in my pantry, and especially now this time of year with the eggs, I'm like, nope, I can't say no to myself. I got to have me some of those. I can't say no to that. And I want us to keep this idea in mind as we go through today, because today we are actually wrapping up a series that we've been in that's leading us up until Easter, and the series is called Canceling Jesus. And what we've been doing is we've been looking at the fact that we live in this cancel culture, and we know how this is working, and we know all the challenges that are going on with someone that we don't agree with. We just cancel them. But yet, many of us would say, hey, Jesus and I are cool. I'm not going to cancel him, but yet our actions say otherwise. And what we mean by that is we look at some of Jesus' teachings, and some of his teachings we're like, wow, that's really encouraging. It's helpful. I agree with it. Hey, Jesus, you and I, we're cool with those. But then there's some other teachings that Jesus says, and we're like, ooh, that's a little uncomfortable. That caused some tension. I'm not sure if I agree with that. That's hard. So I'm just going to kind of skip past that and ignore that. And when we do that, that's actually canceling Jesus. In fact, one of the big ideas that we started off with the series is this, is that when it comes to partially following Jesus, it actually isn't following Jesus. It's canceling him. Maybe not fully or permanently, but it's canceling him, and we're missing out on what he has for us. And so our goal for us as we go throughout the series has been very simple, but it's been hard to get there. And the simple goal is this, is that we want to move from canceling to following Jesus in every aspect of how he calls us to follow him. And the way that we've been doing this is we've been looking at some of the hardest teachings of Jesus. And we've been challenging ourselves. We've been living in the tension. We've been working together in the discomfort. And what we see, and science even proves this, that when you're in the discomfort, you grow. And what we've been doing is we've been growing to become someone who loves, looks, and lives more like Jesus. And what's been really cool is how challenging as this series has been, and it's been challenging for me. So many of you are taking steps and you're growing, and you've been sharing with us, hey, you know, I've been leaning into these teachings, it's been hard, and I'm growing, and I am so proud of those of you who have been taking those steps. Way to go. But we aren't done yet. And today we are wrapping this series up by looking at probably one of the hardest teachings that Jesus actually gave his disciples. In fact, today it's a very, very high challenge for all of us. But if we step into this challenge, we are going to experience more of what Jesus wants for us. And so to set this up, we have to look and see what's going on. And what's going on is Jesus is actually having this closed door meeting with his closest followers. And it's this private conversation. And right in the first part of this conversation, Jesus actually reveals himself to his closest followers as this promised Messiah or Savior to come. And they're like, whoa, we can't believe it. In fact, for them, it was like one of those Tony Stark just revealed he's Iron Iron Man moments. They're all like, whoa, can't believe that you're actually the promised Messiah or the Savior, to come. And if you've been at church for any period of time, you might have heard of Jesus being this promised Messiah as the one who's going to come and die on the cross and pay for our sin. And that's why we celebrate Easter in a week. And while that is very true, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, back then, that wasn't their view of the promised Messiah. Their view was that this promised Messiah or Savior was going to come and free them, the Jewish people, from the Roman Empire and the oppression that the Roman Empire put on them. And so when they heard, hey, Jesus is our guy, they thought, all right, let's go to Jerusalem and let's overthrow an empire. And so they're getting ready to go. But Jesus, he tells them, hey, hold on. Your expectations are off a little bit. And he says, actually, for me, what's going to happen is we are going to go to Jerusalem, but I'm going to be betrayed, and I'm going to suffer, and I am going to be killed. And they heard Jesus say this. They're like, whoa, hold on, Jesus. Are you sure? Because that doesn't make any sense. That sounds nothing like the Messiah we were expecting. In fact, for them, a suffering Messiah was like an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense. It'd be like today when we hear, hey, the Bears have a really good quarterback. I mean, it's just like, we just don't make any sense. Like, they're just a bad quarterback, and they ship him off to Pittsburgh after that. They're like, oh, wow, But for them, they're like, what? Why would we do that? And so Peter, who is one of the closest followers of Jesus, he's in this circle. He's hearing what's going on. He doesn't agree with what Jesus is saying. He decides to take matters into his own hands. And Matthew, who's also there, he records what happened. So Peter, he actually pulls Jesus aside, and he begins to rebuke Jesus, which I love that. Jesus just revealed himself to be the Messiah, the Son of God, and Peter decides he's going to give him some leadership lessons. He's like, hey, Jesus, you can't keep saying things like this because then people aren't going to follow you. And he tells Jesus, he's like, Jesus, never, Lord. This shall never happen to you. And so he's trying to correct Jesus with this. He's literally saying something along the lines of like, God forbid. And we have to keep in mind, Peter has a high interest in Jesus not suffering. Because he's realizing, he's like, hey, if we go to Jerusalem and if Jesus suffers and they know that I'm with him, then I'm going to suffer along with him, and I don't want to go through with that. And so he's trying to cancel Jesus' teaching on this. Well, Peter trying to correct Jesus, the Son of God, and leadership lessons goes over about as well if I were to see Giannis and try to give him some basketball tips. Doesn't go over very well, and this is what Jesus says to him. He says, hey, Peter, get behind me, Satan. Now, there's a lot of things I would want Jesus to say to me. Get behind me, Satan would be at the bottom of the list. Like, what? He's calling Peter Satan now? What's going on? Satan here, the word he's using literally means adversary or an opponent. He says, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. And what Jesus is doing is he's reminding Peter of his place. Whereas Jesus, he's this master teacher, he's their leader, he's their rabbi, and Peter is his disciple or follower. And back then what would happen is the followers, the disciples, they would fall in line behind their master teacher, and they would learn and they would listen from them. And so Jesus is reminding Peter, hey, I teach you, you don't teach me. So go back in line and let's go back into our proper place. And he says, you just have in mind these human concerns. That's why you're trying to cancel my teaching. And these human concerns are these concerns of you can't deny yourself. You are the hardest person to say no to, Peter. That's why you want what you want opposed to what God wants for you. And so Jesus, he sets this up, and then he draws this clear line in the sand, which gets to today's teaching. And he just sets the bar very high for us. And he says, if you want to follow me, this is what it means to actually follow me. And here's how Jesus begins to set up this part of the teaching. He says to Peter and the other disciples, he says, hey guys, whoever wants to be my disciple. Now notice the word wants. Jesus never forces himself on anyone. He's never going to coerce anyone. He's going to invite you and me, and he invites all of us to be his disciple. And so this is an invitation. This would be like, do you want to go out? Do you want to work here? I mean, the choice is up to you, and the choice is up to you to become a follower of his. And that's literally what a disciple means. It's a follower. Another word that I like to use for disciple is the word apprentice. And we can think of it like a plumber's apprentice or an electrician's apprentice. And what does an apprentice do? They learn from their master so that they could do what they do. And that's the goal of apprentice, that they would think like how their master thinks and they would do what their master does. And so Jesus extends this invitation to them, to you, and to me. Whoever wants to be my disciple, the invitation is yours. And if you accept it, you must. And he says that word very clearly, must, meaning the choice to follow him is up to you. You can choose to follow him, but if you accept the invitation, it's no longer an option. Here's what you must do. Here's what followers do. It's like, hey, the job is yours. You can take the job, but if you accept it, here's what is required of you. And then what Jesus does is he gives them 3 imperatives of what a follower of Jesus must do. And so we're going to break these 3 imperatives down. We're going to look at them. And then to wrap it all up, I'm going to share with us just one action step that we can put into place to help us live out these 3 imperatives. And not only that, that we could actually then go from canceling to following as we just wrap up this series. But here's what Jesus says. He says, here's what anyone who's invited to follow Jesus, if you say yes to me, here's what you must do. You must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Those 3 things. Let's break them down real quick. At first, if you want to follow Jesus, you must deny yourself, the hardest person to say no to. Now, what does he mean by denying yourself? Well, first, let's be clear. Jesus doesn't mean, hey, deny yourself in terms of a personality. Like, hey, we don't need to deny that, we're an introvert or an extrovert, or if you know who you are in the DISC assessment or in the Strength Finders or anything like that and personality-wise. He says, no, don't deny that because God's wired us all uniquely. Let's understand who God made us to be. What we mean by denying is we're denying our desires that go against him. When you deny your desires, it allows you to say yes to better desires, to God's desires. But if we go back, we are the hardest people to say no to, and a lot of the reason for that is because when we look at our culture today, to deny ourselves is seen as one of the biggest sins in our culture today. In fact, think about all of the messages that our culture would say to us. They say things like, hey, the heart wants what the heart wants. You do you. Just keep it real. You follow your heart. Just follow your heart's desires. Don't say no. You get what you want. You deserve it. I mean, these are all messages that we hear in our culture. And on top of that, we have instant access to about anything right now. I mean, we just look at the technology we have, and technology is not good or bad. It just is. It's a tool that we have, but it's given us availability to have anything whenever we want. Thanks to high-speed internet, I mean, we can watch whatever we want to watch whenever. We can listen to whatever we want whenever. Now we have Google. We don't have to wait to get answers to questions. We can just Google different things. We can feel like if we're hungry, if we want something, we can literally just tap a few buttons on our phone, and someone will drive a bag of food right to our door and drop it off for us. They don't even have to say hi to us. It's like, wow, it's just right there. We have 1-day shipping. We can read whatever we want. I mean, it's the age of instant access, which means we think on a reasonable basis we can get whatever we want, whenever we want, and it doesn't matter. We just think it should happen. And what science is showing us now is that this is actually rewiring our brains, where we think, okay, I deserve this. I should get this whenever I want. Now, the challenge with this is when we go out into the real world, people don't move at our speed. A couple of months ago, my daughter and I, we went out for a daddy-daughter dinner, which we like to do. And I tell her, I was like, hey, why don't you go ahead and just pick where you want to go? And she decided that night she wanted to go to the Olive Garden for whatever reason. So I'm like, okay, we'll go. And we drive there, and we get there to this time. It's a very busy time. We walk in, and they tell us at the door, they said, hey, it's going to be about a 60-minute wait. And so I look at my daughter, Jalen, and I just say, hey, do we really want to wait 60 minutes, for the Olive Garden? And she got what I was asking at that point. She's like, no, let's go somewhere else. So she picks another place. We go there. They say 45-minute wait. So we like, hey, it's the same routine. We go to another place, another 45-minute wait. And so we're just kind of bouncing around from place to place, going through that. Everywhere's busy. So then she decides, hey, let's just grab some fast food over at this place, and let's get some burgers and fries. And so when we get there and we make the order for these greasy burgers and fries, I look at my watch. It was just a little past 60 minutes. When I looked at and I said, wow, if we would have waited, I would be elbow deep in endless breadsticks and salad right now. Instead, I have the grease all over me. And I thought, oh, that's an example of just not waiting. I wanted what I want whenever I want it. It didn't work out. And that's why we just have real challenges in the real world with that. And that's why we see anger and road rage and people fighting at fast food places, because we think we deserve what we want whenever we want. And in a culture that says, hey, don't deny yourself, when Jesus says, deny yourself, at worst, this feels like, hey, we have to repress ourselves. At best, we might feel a little weird with that. And we might wonder, hey, Jesus, what do you really mean when you would say, deny yourself? Well, Paul, he actually wrote about this. We looked at this passage a little earlier in the series. He built on this idea, and he said, hey, this is how we deny ourselves. We put to death, which is strong language, because these are strong desires inside of us. We put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to our earthly nature. Jesus used the phrase human concerns, the desires that we have that go against God's desires, the what we want, whenever we want, and we don't care who it impacts. We say no to these desires. When we have these desires to say, hey, just sleep with whoever you want to sleep with. Just look at whoever you want to look at or whatever you want to look at. Or be greedy with whatever it is that you have and just use it all for yourself. Jesus says these are the desires that cause harm to others. Deny these desires so that you have the availability to say yes to God's desires. And what we'll find out and what we'll discover is that these are better desires and more fulfilling desires anyways. And so Jesus says, if you want to be my disciple, first, you deny yourself. But then the second imperative is simply this. Then you must take up your cross and follow me. Take up your cross. Now, at first glance, and admittedly for me, when I read this, I kind of thought this was another way to say deny yourself. Like Jesus is saying, deny yourself and then deny yourself. But really, Jesus is saying something entirely different. He meant this in a very literal sense. And for us today, we might miss out on the weight of what he's saying because of what has happened over the last 100 years or so, that when it comes to the idea of a cross, it's become a very sentimental symbol for so many of us. In fact, we might see a cross like this today, and we might think of this cross as a nice decoration piece in a building, or maybe we see it as a logo that could be done on a website, or maybe some of us, we have some jewelry in the shape of a cross, maybe a necklace or some earrings or something else. And I'm not saying this to dig at anyone. I know for a lot of us, this is very sentimental and it has a feeling for us. But what's important to understand, the weight of what Jesus is saying is back then, the cross, it wouldn't have had any sentimental value. Because for them, when they saw a cross, they saw something that symbolized torture. They saw something that symbolized violence. They saw something that symbolized the most shameful and horrific way to die. Because the Roman Empire, they would use the cross as this torture device to torture and violently kill people as a way to deter other people, say, hey, don't end up like them, follow us. And it was done as this horrendous and shameful act to kill so many people. And so when Jesus said this, they would have literally gasped. It would have stopped them in their tracks because they understood the weight of the words of what he was saying. In fact, heading into this week with Easter, you may see or hear some things online where people will go into graphic detail about what happened to Jesus on the cross. And it is very graphic. It's horrific when you find out what all happened on the cross. But when we read from many of the authors who wrote about Jesus being crucified, they just kept it as that. They would just use that phrase. And they crucified him on a cross. And the reason why they only use that phrase that was all that they needed back then. Every single reader would have the image in their mind. They would know exactly what that is because that's exactly what they saw. They saw the hurt and the weight and the violence and the shame that went with it, and they realized that when Jesus said a disciple must take up their cross, they understood exactly what Jesus was saying, and it was a very literal saying where Jesus said, I want you to follow me so closely that even if you end up to the spot where you would die for me, you would die for me. And that's exactly what happened to many of these first followers of Jesus. In fact, 11 out of the 12 of them in that circle were actually killed for their faith in Jesus. Many of them actually were crucified. And we might hear this teaching today, and we may not realize that Jesus talked about this in the very literal sense, because for many of us in the rooms that we're in today, many of us who are watching online right now, we don't have to fear this death that may happen because of our faith. But we have to remember, while we thank God for that, this isn't true for many other followers of Jesus throughout the rest of this world. In fact, Open Doors is this great nonprofit that's advocating for those who are persecuted because of their faith in Jesus throughout the world today. They released on their website some stats about what happened in 2023. And they said in 2023, worldwide, there were 5,000 followers of Jesus who were murdered for their faith in him. And not only that, there are currently 365 million followers of Jesus worldwide who are facing high levels of persecution and discrimination, specifically in the continents of Africa and Asia, where they're making decisions to follow him. And they realize that by making the decisions to follow him, they are risking their very lives. And while we may not be facing a physical death when it comes to following Jesus, we realize that when we follow Jesus, there may be some death that we do face. We may face a death of a relationship, maybe a death of a friendship, maybe a dead end in our career, or we lose a promotion because we aren't willing to do the things that they're asking us to do because it goes against our faith. Maybe some will cancel us in the midst of cancel culture, and we experience the real difficulties that come when it comes to following Jesus. In fact, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was this pastor during World War II, a German pastor, and he was one of the few pastors who was brave enough to stand up to Nazi Germany and say, what you're doing is wrong. He was actually arrested and killed in a concentration camp. But before he was killed, he wrote this classic book, The Cost of Discipleship. And in it, he wrote this quote. He says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Now, I see a lot of Instagram quotes of the day. I don't see people posting this one. But here's what Bonhoeffer is sharing, and this is what Jesus means when he says, come take up your cross. Jesus is inviting us to follow him even to the point when it gets hard and when it costs you something. And it will get hard, and it will cost us something. Inevitably, it will cost us relationships and friendships. I've experienced this. I've had friends leave me. I've got uninvited to gatherings. I've been completely ignored to other gatherings. I've been made fun of in college classes and other places because of my faith in Jesus. And there's times that it gets hard, and there's a cost to it. And we might think, oh, this sounds so hard and negative. Why would Jesus want us to follow him to the point that even it may cost us and maybe even cost us our life? And the short answer is why he's inviting us to do this is because this is the highest form of love for another person. This is the love that Jesus demonstrated to us. In fact, even before he was arrested and killed, he told his followers, he said, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And Jesus went and did that just moments after saying this. That's why we're going to celebrate Easter in a few days. And he says, this is the can't stop, won't stop loving that I have for you, where I'm willing to give myself for you. And I want a relationship with you. Would you be willing to do the same for me? To love me and follow me, even to the point where it's hard and even when it costs you something. And so that's the second imperative. And then Jesus said, here's the third thing that a follower of me is invited to do. And if they accept the invitation, they have to do this. They have to follow me. Have to follow me. And back then, what we would see the disciples or the apprentices of Jesus do, or anyone do if they had a religious rabbi as their leader, is that they would literally follow them wherever they would go. And they would just follow them around and listen to everything they would say. They'd try to soak in all the teachings. They would try to mimic and do all the actions they would do. They would follow and just do everything that their master did because they wanted to become just like their master. And that was the goal of apprentice, to just think and do what their master did for them. And Jesus says, this is what I want you to do. I want you to follow me so that you would look and do exactly like I look and do. And we might hear this and think, well, hold on, Jesus, hold on. You're telling us that if we were to accept the invitation to follow you, we have to deny ourselves, which we're the hardest people to say no to. We have to take up our cross, which means this is going to cost us something. And we just do that just so we can follow you? Hey, Jesus, I don't know if it's worth that. Is it worth it, Jesus? And if you have that question, if you wrestle with that, I mean, I think the good news is you're understanding the weight of what he's calling us to. But I think a lot of the reason why we do this is because we get to the point where we start treating Jesus like a profit and loss sheet. And what I mean by a profit and loss sheet is as a follower of his, we might look at the business leader who takes a P&L sheet and start thinking about all of the losses and the gains and the profits that he has. And he says, oh, I got these profits, I got these gains. Hey, let's maximize these gains. Let's do what we can for this. But then, we have the losses. This is the red. Let's minimize these costs. And so we might approach Jesus the same way. We'd say, hey, Jesus, I follow you, and I see some of these gains. I'm going to maximize those gains. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take in your grace and your love and your forgiveness, and I'm going to receive all of that. But Jesus, when it comes to this cost of denying myself and sacrificing myself, I'm going to be like that business leader. I'm going to want to minimize those costs. I don't want to do so much of that. But when we do that, here's what happens. We find ourselves half in with Jesus. We aren't fully following him. And we're missing out on the more that he has for us. Jesus has so much more for us. In fact, Jesus actually anticipated us asking this question and wrestling with us. And so Jesus, he responds to this after giving us this teaching, and he gives us this rule of life. And he says, here's why you want to do this. He says, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me, they will find it. And Jesus goes back to this idea of here's why you'd want to follow me. There is so much more of me that you can experience it. And I think of it like this. We've talked about this throughout the series. Is that this is kind of like the idea of when we work out. And if you go to the gym, and for a lot of us, we don't want to go to the gym. We don't want to lift those weights. We don't, it's uncomfortable. It's hard. It's difficult. And so we go there and we're like, oh, I can't lift that. But if we put ourselves under the tensions and the difficulties, here's what we gain. We gain these strength gains, and we grow and we become healthier. And actually, at the point, if you actually start working out that much, you start realizing the benefits. You're just like, yeah, I can't go back on that. I have to keep doing this. Following Jesus works the exact same way, where we're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to the point where it's going to cost me something. That's uncomfortable. But if we do it, and if we live in the discomfort, we live in the tension, here's what we gain. We gain so much more by following him. We gain more in Jesus. We discover that Jesus is so much more for us. In fact, because we experience more of Jesus, we would say, I can't go back. I'm going to keep denying myself. I'm going to keep taking up my cross because following Jesus is so much better than life ourselves. What we discover is that Jesus actually says, I am more interested than just getting you into heaven. See, you may be interested in starting to follow me because I can forgive you of your sins and I can get you into heaven after you die, but that's just the starting point. I want to get heaven into you so that you live out the values of the kingdom of heaven wherever you go. We might think, hey, I just want Jesus to save me from my sin. And Jesus said, yeah, I want to, but I'm more interested in transforming you so that you would avoid sin and that you would actually look like me and represent me wherever you go. And you'll discover, hey, this doesn't make you better at life. This doesn't make life better for you. But what you discover is that following Jesus is better than life itself. And that's what Jesus wants for you and why he wants you and has invited you to take up your cross, to deny yourself, and to follow him. And so as we begin to wrap up this series and wrap up our time together today, I just want to give us one word that we can begin to put into practice that will help us live out what Jesus has invited us to do. And this word may be really difficult for a lot of us, but this word is simply this: surrender. Surrender, where we surrender ourselves to the way of Jesus. We give up our way so that we can go his way. We'd say, Jesus, not my will, but your will be done. In fact, I define surrender like this. Surrender looks like this. When we tell Jesus, hey, Jesus, hey, the answer is yes. Now, what's the question? What is it you want to do? The answer is automatically yes. I am going to follow you. I'm not just going to go ahead and agree with you and then let my actions and my body just kind of like not do what you've told me to do, but rather I'm going to not just agree with you mentally. I am going to actually follow you and deny myself and even follow you to the point where it will cost me something. And so, as we begin to wrap up our time together, let me just ask you this. Hey, what do you need to surrender? What do you need to surrender? What are you holding on to and canceling Jesus on that he's inviting you and saying, hey, move from cancel to follow? Would you surrender this? For some of us, surrendering is this. We're actually going to work up the courage and the boldness to invite that friend to join us for Easter. Others of us, we've been holding on to our finances. We know Jesus has invited us to trust him with our finances. Surrender says, here's what I'm going to do. Jesus, I'm going to trust you with my finances. I'm going to honor you in this area of my life. Some of us, it's with a relationship. And we know the relationship is not healthy. And so for us, surrender is, hey, I'm going to break up with them. I'm going to move out. Others, I'm going to forgive them, or I'm going to confess them. I'm going to go get help for the addiction that I'm dealing with. It's time to admit that I need help. I'm going to go do it. What does surrender mean to you? And what are you holding on to? Say, Jesus, yes, I've been canceling you on this, but now I want to follow. I want to surrender. It's yours. Even if this requires me denying myself, taking up the cross and following you, I'm in. What is it that you need to do? Would you be willing to go from canceling to following? And so if you're ready to do that, here's what we're going to do. Together at all of our locations and online, we're just going to pray and make this commitment to God, and then we're going to spend a few moments just responding as a way to just continue to commit to honoring God by surrendering to him. So would you pray with me? Jesus, you gave your life for us so that we could gain life in you. And following you is so much better than following ourselves. God, we realize that today. And God, even though it's so hard to say no to our wants and our desires because we think we know better, God, we just humbly admit that we've been prideful and we know that you know better. And so God, right now, I just pray for all of us. I pray for myself. And I pray, God, that you would reveal to us the things that we are holding on to, that we are canceling you in. And God, I just pray, God, that you would just give us the courage and the wisdom to just surrender that to you right now, God. God, we just ask for the humility to say, not my way, but your way, because your way is better. And God, I know that it may hurt, it may cost us something. We may even feel like it's not worth it at first. And God, in those moments we don't feel like it's worth it, I pray, God, that you would reveal to us that you are far more worth it in the end. And so, Jesus, we commit to following you. God, we commit to denying ourselves. God, we commit to taking up our cross. And we commit, God, to following you and listening to you. We surrender ourselves to you. And we thank you for the ability to do that we aren't just surrendering ourselves to a God who doesn't love us, but you gave of yourself for us so that we could find life in you. God, that's what we get to celebrate in a few days at Easter. And so, God, we just give ourselves to you right now because you gave Jesus to us. We commit this to you, and it's in his name that we pray. Amen. Well, the reason why we can surrender to Jesus and know that we're going to gain so much more in him is because he gave of his life for us first. He went for you and me first. And that's why we get to celebrate Easter in a few days, because he didn't just tell us to take up our cross. He actually took up his cross, and he nailed our sin with him on that cross. And he told us how he was going to do that the night before he did that in this meal with his closest followers. And he taught us how to remember and reflect on this through this act of communion that we're going to spend some time taking together at all of our locations. And so right now, if you're at one of our locations, I'd ask you to just pass the baskets down your row. They're on my right and your left. If you're joining us online, you can go ahead and get your elements out. But if you're in one of our rooms, you'll notice that there's a top layer, which represents the bread, and there's a bottom layer, which represents the cup. And that night, before Jesus took up his cross, he actually told his followers what was about to happen for them. And he did this by taking a loaf of bread and he broke it. And he said, "This is my body, which has been broken for you for the forgiveness of your sins." And he told them to take and eat and to do so in remembrance of them. And then shortly after that, he took the cup and he poured it out and he said, "This is my blood, which has been poured out for you for the forgiveness of your sins." And he told them to take and drink and to do so in remembrance of him. And so, as he let his body be nailed to the cross for you, would you just take of the elements and spend a few quiet moments at your seat, wherever you are, just reflecting on how Jesus gave up his life so that you could find life in him. And because Jesus demonstrated his love for us by giving his life for us, we can demonstrate that love back to him by giving our lives back to him, by accepting his invitation to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. And right now we're going to spend just a couple moments just singing a part of a song and responding and just making this commitment to Jesus, saying, "Hey, I surrender all to you." And one of the ways that we can do this as we sing is, you may notice sometimes there's people who raise their hands while they sing. Raising your hands is that sign of saying, "Jesus, I surrender all, and I give myself to you." And so right now, I want to challenge you as a way to accept Jesus' invitation as we sing together, to let Jesus know, "Hey, I surrender all. I give myself to you, even if it's hard and costs me something," by raising your hands as we sing. So right now, I'm going to invite all of us, let's stand up and let's sing to God together.
I give you my life.
The story of Easter is a story of hope. And despite dying, Jesus didn't stay dead. His death and resurrection changed everything and triggered a very intentional plan and chain of events that forever broke down any barriers that could stand between us and God. It's why we can sing and talk about surrender and trusting Jesus. He's earned it, and it's because of him that we can talk about having hope for a full and amazing life. Now, some of you have heard us talk about the hope of Jesus, but you haven't yet experienced it. Well, I want to invite you to come join us for Easter services in person if you're able to make it to our Greenfield or Oak Creek Franklin campuses. We want you to be in the room with us as we celebrate what Jesus did. It's the perfect opportunity to experience connecting with God during a service. And we think you'll get something special out of the experience in a different way than connecting with us online. So if you've been considering checking out an in-person service, this would be the week to give it a try. Plus, the environment is going to be great for your family. We have a parking team for stress-free parking, a free photo booth to snag a picture with your fam, and a place for your kids to have an amazing time with other kids their age and some great leaders. And if you're watching and a friend has been bugging you to come check it out, let them know you're coming so they can come show you around. And of course, if you've been thinking about inviting a friend, it's not too late to invite someone. Maybe that's an invite to join you in person, or depending on what they're comfortable with and what you know of their faith story, maybe you can share a link to the Easter services online. And listen, if you extend the invite and you get a no, it's still worth it. God works through all of it, and he grows our faith when we share it with others, regardless of what their response is. Just be brave and bold in your invite and trust God with the results. Most of the people at the Ridge wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a friend who invited them to church. And also, real quick before we get to Easter, I want to invite you to our Good Friday experience. This isn't a service. It's a self-guided, go at your own pace, immersive experience to help us reflect on and remember the events of the days leading up to Easter, the weight of Jesus' sacrifice, and what it still means for us today. So come and go anytime between 4 and 7 p.m. and childcare will be available up through 3rd grade. Small thing to know, this isn't the best thing to invite someone who wouldn't call themselves a follower of Jesus. Save that invite for Easter, because this is targeted to those of us who know Jesus or are already open-minded and exploring what this faith thing is all about. So as we wrap up service today, we're going to move into a time of offering. And when we give to things like Easter, to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. And the easiest way to give is by following the link you'll see on the screen. We're going to do this together, and then I'll be right back. Next week, we're going to celebrate Easter, and we want you with us experiencing the hope of Jesus. Thank you so much for joining us for service this week, and may the hope of Jesus be in your home as we work to bring that hope to every home.